This is a review and just a little guide on how to use the Sainsmart Genmitsu drag knife. I've had my Sainsmart 4040 Pro for about 4 years and used it a lot of different projects and always wanted to cut vinyl with it. I don't have a Cricut and so I can't use it for that kind of stuff. But this drag knife gives me that capability. Real quick about the knife that Sainsmart makes, that works really well. It's all solid metal. The bearing is really smooth. It turns very easily. Loading the blade is really simple. All you got to do is loosen the set screws, put your blade in, and tighten them back down. Now I set mine at the zero height setting, so that puts the tip of the blade right at the axis of the shaft. There are settings in more advanced software with a drag knife that you can put an offset on, but I don't have that capability with my software. So I just use it at the zero spot and went from there. Um, the knife itself, it works really well. I can't really imagine any ways that it could be improved. So let me tell you a little bit about setting it up. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of information that comes with the drag knife about how to actually use it other than just putting the blades in it. So what I had to do, I'm using Lightburn's new CNC software called MillMage. It's a great little thing. I can do my designs on there the same way I do in Lightburn, but I can then also send everything to my machine which runs Gerbil straight from that software. There wasn't a drag knife in the setup, so I had to create a new tool. I named it Drag Knife. I set it as the tool type as drag, the tool diameter as 0.5 millimeters, a number of flutes, 1, cut direction, conventional, cut along the line. And then here's the thing that I actually found really helpful. I did quite a bit of research to find the right thing, and this really seemed to kind of work well for me. So set the feed rate at 40 inches per minute, or that's 1016 millimeters per minute. For the ramp feed, I did half of that, 20 or 508 millimeters per minute. The spindle speed, you want to make sure that's at 0. Actually, on my spindle, I disconnected the wires. I didn't want to risk any chance that the spindle would start rotating because with the drag knife, you don't want it to rotate. That would be a bad thing. For the plunge, again, I did half the feed rate speed, so 20 inches per minute, 508 millimeters per minute. Start depth, I put it 0, and the final depth at 0.1 for cutting the vinyl. And then also my depth per pass is 0.01 inches, or that's a quarter of a millimeter, 0.25 millimeters. For the demonstration today, I just did a simple text design and assigned it to a profile operation with the drag knife tool that I created just before. For setting up the machine, one of the things you want to do is you want to tape something down to the spoil board as kind of your sacrificial surface. I wouldn't use your stock spoil board. That's going to dull your blade really fast and just cut it up a lot. I happen to have a cutting mat for a fabric rotary cutter that I already had, and so I taped that down with masking tape. I've seen online people use cardboard, though that might add a little bit of squishiness that may not support the material quite as well. You could use chipboard, thin cardboard, even a thin plastic cutting board, anything that can lay perfectly flat. And then it's just a matter of sticking it in the collet. You do want to make sure that the spindle can rotate freely, 360 degrees. Particularly when you're raising up the drag knife, you don't want it to hit the bottom of the mount for your Z-axis. What I did is I put it in, and then I zeroed the X and Y axes using my software. Then I used the software wherever the Z-axis was. It really didn't matter. I entered it and made that 0 right there. And then I used the knob at the top to adjust my Z-axis manually, not through the software, but doing it manually. If you don't have a little knob at the top of your Z-axis, you could twist the lead screw. When you're lowering your Z-axis, you want to get it all the way down, almost to the surface, but not all the way, because you want 0 to be the top of the vinyl. And so you're going to put it there, and then you're going to take your piece of vinyl and you're going to slide it under. If you can slide it under real easily, your Z-axis is too high, and lower it just a little bit. Keep lowering it until you just barely can't get that vinyl under there, or it really kind of is difficult to get it under. That's where you want it at 0. Now, again, because we've adjusted this manually instead of using the software, back in the software, it's still at 0. And so 0 is the top of your vinyl, and then we'll have it cut into the surface 1/4 of a millimeter or 0.01 inches. Once you got that set, you can lift up your Z-axis using the software. Again, make sure that it's flipped forward and that you don't raise it up into the bottom of your Z-axis mount. Tape down all 4 sides and corners of the vinyl to the cutting surface. I actually did it the first time just taping a couple sides, and what I ended up having is that the vinyl kind of bunched up. So you want to make sure you tape all the way around the vinyl. Once you got that all set, start your job and watch it go. One of the things you will need to be careful about is making sure that your spoil board is perfectly level. Because vinyl is really thin, just a slight difference can make a big difference. It'll either cut through the backing of your vinyl, or it won't cut all the way through your vinyl. And maybe it'll actually just score it. And so one of the things you'll see at the end of my run here is that it actually just scored the surface, and it had a hard time even following the path because it wasn't quite digging it enough, and that's because I have not yet leveled my spoil board. The other thing to know about a drag knife is that the corners, it's really hard to get a sharp corner. That's because the blade needs to only turns once it starts moving a different direction, and so there's a little bit of a delay. And so there's a couple things you can do about that. One thing is keep the speed a little lower. Really, the best thing to do, though, is if you have some cutoff space, you can actually make your cut go a little bit further than your cut, and then do a 270-degree spin and come back in at the correct direction to get a nice sharp corner. Are on this that you can make the blade a little offset from the center, but you have to have software that you can put that offset in. And unfortunately, my software, as far as I know, doesn't have that, because you need the software to compensate for that little bit of change. And that'll get you a little bit crisper corners. Before you actually cut your whole decal, I suggest testing. One of the things that I did is I just made a 1-inch round diameter circle on my design, and I cut that just to make sure that every direction that it went, that it would go around the circle, and that it would cut it out real nice, and I had the right height. If your blade gets dull, just flip the blade over or replace it. Standard box cutter blades fit, or utility knife blades will fit in this drag knife.
What I've done is I've cut out my decal to the approximate shape, a little bit bigger, and this is the part where you want to do what's called weeding, and so you will pull off the parts that you don't want. So I'm separating here, the front and the back. We gently pull those off. And it's a little tricky at the beginning and the ending parts. So maybe you want to put your finger down there when you get to that part right where it started pulling, started the vector around that line. And you gently pull off. See here, this 3 is working just perfectly because it was at just the right height there. Oh. And of course, I'm getting it all stuck together. But I'm going to run into trouble here now on that last one where I probably didn't cut all the way through. I'm going to see how far I can get on that. Let's trim this off so we don't stick it all together. You kind of push down in the middle of that. There we go. Let's see if I can, with it being scored as it was, let's see if I can just kind of pull it around, hopefully. Yeah, as it got a little farther, that's having a hard time with that. A little tool like this will be really helpful. You can use it to kind of hold down here as I try to get that to pull around. Like I said, I'm not sure it's going to work as well here because I didn't quite cut all the way through. So that I might have to go back by with a scissors and fix that up a little bit. But I should be able to get the inside of that 3. I think that was still okay. Oh, no. Here we go. There you go. Now you can kind of see my letters. Now, a little tool like this is really helpful. You can also just use like a blade of an X-Acto knife and use that to just kind of pull up there and get that inside part, especially if you're having a hard time getting one little part. Again, you gotta be real careful around where the blade started because it doesn't quite get a real clean cut at the beginning and the ending. I'm guessing there's probably a way to get it to do that in the software, but I haven't gotten that far yet. And then when you're all done and you're ready to put it onto something, you use this transfer tape. It comes on a nice big roll like this. You separate the parts. Oh, that's going to keep rolling on me. Well, this makes for an exciting video. Alright, so once you get that corner started, it's not so bad. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take your transfer tape like this, and it's got lines on it you can see. You want to try to line those lines up right with the bottom of your letters. That'll help you get it nice and lined up on the surface that you're going to put it on. Now, honestly, the best way to do this would have been to start at one side and kind of pull your backing out. But I wanted you to be able to see those lines. And let's be honest, I'm new at this, so I'm not exactly an expert. And so, well, I kind of missed. But you get that on there. And then I'm going to take this to where I want to fix it, and I will pull off the back of the vinyl. Like so. And see, then the decal sticks to the transfer tape. And then you can put it on and pull off the transfer tape. But before I do that, I'm going to have to go through. I'm going to have to just trim around this and get that real nice there. I can do that in transfer tape. Okay, here's the moment of truth. I've mounted this on my mailbox here and got it started just a little bit. And I start pulling off my transfer tape. There's a nice, beautiful decal. Now you can kind of see here some of the little drawbacks, particularly here around where it started. And over here, of course, this is where I had to cut it out. But other than that, I mean, especially from far away, I mean, that looks really nice.